Hello, and it's good to have you join us again on Maritime Radar. The direct shipment from Shanghai to Lagos means Nigerian traders can now receive not only containerized goods, but also vehicles including cars, vans, trucks, and project cargo on the same vessel. This new route eliminates the complexities and reduces overall costs for importers and exporters who previously had to rely on indirect shipping routes with multiple stops. Nigeria to China, two prominent players in their respective fields, have established strong bilateral ties over time, and trade between the two countries has grown exponentially since 2000, though Nigeria has continued to suffer a deficit. The Observatory of Economic Complexity observed that in 2023, Nigeria lost over $15.49 billion in net exports to China. This direct shipping route, experts believe, could bridge the gap and help Nigeria gain lost ground and also help supply chains function better with great benefits for exports. This will also ensure reduction in the cost of doing business, which will translate to a reduction in the prices of goods and services. Assessing Donald Trump's second term, the opportunities and challenges for the United States, Africa trade and supply chains are some of the issues that will be on the front burner on today's show. I am Norma Obiora Madu. In Africa, both the processes and degree of regional integration have lagged behind expectation, and many political commitments have either not been translated into policy and regulatory reforms or are simply not implemented. The region thus remains weakly integrated with continued tariff barriers, for example, where restrictive rules of origin cannot be met. Global markets offer important opportunities for companies in developing countries by exporting to larger markets. This will increase production growth and employment rather than focusing on smaller domesticated market. Developing continents like Africa must overcome severe hurdles before being able to export to global markets. Looking at this critically, regional markets become the required testing ground for these companies. Barriers to accessing markets in the region are often lower than those of the global markets as they share similar tastes, standards, distance, and culture. Before we get further into today's lineup of the program, let's find out the latest in maritime news.
In a bid to address stakeholder concerns about truck traffic around Apapa and Tinkan Island port complexes, Abubakar Dansoho, the managing director of the Nigerian Ports Authority, made an unscheduled visit to the Lagos Ports Access Road this week. During his inspection of key operational areas, Dansoho emphasized that these unexpected visits will be frequent and are part of NPA's commitment to continuous improvement. He instructed port managers to urgently tackle the issues highlighted by the trucking and freight forwarding communities. Assuring he would personally follow up on compliance and tangible outcomes, Dansoho highlighted the importance of traffic management efficiency, explaining that in addition to optimizing the electronic call-up system, there are efforts to promote multimodal evacuation methods through barges and rail lines. Dansoho also spoke on the Federal Executive Council's approval to begin reconstruction at Tinkan Island and to rehabilitate problematic sections of the Apapa port complexes, noting that these developments, alongside the federal government's approval of the National Single Window Project, signal Nigeria's preparedness to handle larger cargo vessels, aligning with Nigeria's population size and economic needs. In a turn of events that could reshape global economic strategies, the International Monetary Fund has significantly downgraded its trade growth forecasts for advanced economies in its latest World Economic Outlook. The report now predicts 2.1% growth in trade for advanced economies in 2025, down from earlier estimates by half a percentage point, with a slight recovery to 2.5% in 2026. This downward revision paints a cautious picture for countries like the United States, where economic growth is also expected to decline from 2.7% in 2025 to 2.1% in 2026. On the flip side, emerging markets are set for a slight increase in trade growth, with projections at 5.0% for 2025 and 4.6% in 2026, a silver lining amidst global trade turbulence. However, the trajectory for these economies hints at a cooling off, which might affect their global standing and economic strategies. Moreover, the report casts a shadow over China's economic prowess, projecting a further decline in growth from 4.8% in 2024 to 4.5% in 2026, signaling potential challenges ahead for the world's second largest economy. This recalibration by the IMF not only reflects a cautious outlook for global trade, but also prompts businesses and policymakers worldwide to rethink strategies in light of these emerging economic realities.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Maritime Radar. Donald Trump's trade policies may introduce new complexities to global supply chains. Increased tariff and stringent import regulations could impact African exporters, especially for goods with ties to China. Rising logistics and inventory costs may further challenge African exporters, impacting competitiveness in the global market. African nations must balance strategic competition with developmental priorities, ensuring partnerships with the United States of America to deliver shared benefits while addressing the continent's unique challenges in a rapidly evolving global landscape. In this chart, with Dr. Obiora Madu, trade, logistics, and supply chain expert, he's also chairman Multimix Group. He shares the logistics challenges and opportunities Donald Trump's new duty policy presents for Africa and the arrival of the first direct shipment to Nigeria. This and many more after this short break. Please stay with us. It's good to have you join us again on the show, sir.
My pleasure.
Okay, let's start this conversation from home. What policy direction do you want to see captured in the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy National Policy? You are aware that they are putting together the national policy that should address the logistics challenges and also explore the opportunities that logistics and supply chain has.
Thank you very much. We're all shouting blue economy, blue economy. Blue economy is quite wide. It's not just about maritime. There is so much activity to it. On land, real estate, tourism, and other activities around are all embedded. So it's something huge, probably bigger than we think. Setting up a ministry is fantastic, but that won't solve the problem. Because if we continue with the bureaucratic nature of what we are doing, we'll still be where we are. For example, if you look at the blue economy, it cuts across several ministries, not only the maritime ministry. Agric ministry is there, and some other ministries.
Fishery and all that.
Exactly. So the question is, if the Ministry of Blue Economy develops a policy on its own, how will it fare with the other ministries? So some other people are of the opinion that it should have been a commission so that the policy can cut across whoever is involved in this ministry. We may not see this now, but down the line when the policy comes into operation, and public sector people do not understand collaboration. They kind of always competing for popularity, working in silos. So this is
which has kept us where we are today.
Exactly. So everybody is upbeat about the policy that is being made. Fine. It is when it gets operational that we'll know whether it is going to serve our purpose or not.
Oh, okay, the skill gap is another area I want you to look at in Nigeria. So what in the areas of supply chain, the skill gap in the supply chain. So how do you think, as an expert, this can be addressed?
The skill gap in supply chain is actually a crisis right now, as observed by DHL after a survey. And a lot is going on around the world. So many people are retiring but there are no people to take up their position. A lot of effort has been made in Nigeria. We succeeded in getting NUC to approve a BSc, Logistics and Supply Chain Management.
Okay.
It was approved and published last year. As I speak with you, there are pioneer students in LASU, there are pioneer students in Kaduna State University. Okay. That is a major step. Then, of course, we went further to take logistics and supply chain down to secondary school, because these are where people, when they are filling JAMB form, they will be applying to read those courses.
So if you don't address it from the secondary school,
exactly.
You miss it.
So we started with LASU International School, and we intend to spread it to other, because that is the only way. And the companies will also become strategic in their talent planning and how to replace the aging population that are working. So I think it's a global phenomenon. It's not a Nigerian challenge alone. But at least from what I have said, you can see that thanks to Learn Logistics, a German company that is assisting heavily in this very particular pursuit of getting enough talent for the industry.
So let's also look at Lagos port congestion. What are the consequences of this congestion on logistics and supply chain?
Of course, it's a big challenge. It's a big disruption to supply chains. Because if you run a manufacturing company and then you order raw materials and it gets to the port at the time the port is congested, and then your container is block stacked, you are finished. You have to shut down the factory and wait and continue to do night vigil and hoping it will come out someday. So the issue is that part of the challenge we have in Nigeria is that we don't quantify things in figures. All we hear is there's congestion. What is it worth in Naira and Kobo?
Yes.
What is it worth in Naira? What are we losing if it is put in Naira and Kobo and people see it? Maybe something will be done. You know, there's this joke that a man was asked 7 plus 7. Say he doesn't know. But when they say 7 Naira plus 7 Naira, he says 14 Naira. So if we're able to reduce it to Naira and Kobo, we'll take it more serious. The companies are suffering. Look at our position in the Logistics Performance Index, which centers around the port. 110 out of 136 in the world. Actually, in the last one they did, World Bank did, that was 2023. The only thing that improved in Nigeria is the logistics service, which proves that those of us who are in the business of building capacity in this very area have achieved a lot. Only that one, logistics service, moved. I think customs moved a little. Every other parameter out of the 5 pillars that are considered, we're still not doing too well about it.
So as an expert, what solutions will you be profiling to this?
Well, when we were speaking earlier, you talked about some priority, these things that are given and then abused. And as long as everything amounts to Naira and Kobo in this country and there's no national interest, we'll continue to have a problem. You put people, call them task force, call them anything, and put them somewhere. The next thing is, what is in it for me? Because essentially, that is what the problem is. Essentially, that is what the problem is. Because if there is a determination which comes from every stakeholder, it is easy to solve. At times, when something will be achieved and I remember once I was going to Apapa, when I checked my time from here, it was telling me 12 minutes. I said, how? How? So it is possible. It is very, very possible. Just like every other thing is attributed to political will. Probably I should attribute this one to political will. Look, people, you must step on toes. And at very, very high places. You must, when people don't have KPIs, nothing is measured. So how do you want to achieve results? It's difficult to achieve results. So if we want to, we need to sit down And I think Shippers Council has a very big role to play in this, being the economic regulator of the port. Shippers Council need to lead the reorganization,
Okay.
and then having key performance indicators from every sector, from every of the stakeholders at the port, and then you will see something different to happen.
For the Shippers Council, I just hope that when the bill at the National Assembly is sorted, maybe they will be able to do this. So we'll be looking at Trump's new duty policy, but that will be after the short break. Please stay with us.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is still Maritime Read, and I still have with me Dr. Obiora Madu. Before we went on that break, we were looking at Trump's policies. So how will Donald Trump's second term redefine U.S.-Africa trade and supply chain? What are the challenges that you see? What are also the opportunities that you see for Africa, and of course, narrowing down to Nigeria?
Thank you very much. You know, Trump has always been anti-Africa, even in his first tenure. Thank God he didn't cancel AGOA at that time, but this time I don't think AGOA will survive. For the interest of the stakeholders, AGOA is the African Growth and Opportunities Act, which enables countries within the sub-Saharan Africa to export almost 6,000 items to the US, duty-free, water-free. This has been on since the time of Clinton. It doesn't matter whether we have not benefited so much as a country, but so many African countries have benefited. So the first victim is likely going to be AGOA,
Okay.
which is expiring in September.
This year.
That's one. Then, on the other hand, the duty imposition on products that are coming in also will have a spiraling effect. Of course, the tendency to now take in less quantity that they were taking before is there. You have seen from goings on that all these things are not really well thought out policies, because he has swallowed his words with some countries and made some adjustments. But on the whole, what it is saying to Africa, it's just like while we were having a webinar, and I asked the speaker from the US, I said, what should developed countries do to help African countries in sustainable supply chain? You know what he answered? He said, they should leave them alone.
Wow. That
That was his answer. They should leave the developing countries alone. And alone, we can do a whole lot on our own. So this is actually, I see it as an opportunity for African countries
to sit up.
to sit up. To sit up, because actually we shouldn't be begging anybody in the world about most things that we're begging for. And unfortunately, a lot of these aids and the rest of the things that they end up in private pockets.
Okay, coming home, what do you think Nigeria should be doing about this Trump's new duty policy coming home to Nigeria?
Are we really going to lose much about that thing? If we suffer anything, we probably or gain something, it will be in crude oil.
Okay.
Because if you check figures for Nigeria under AGOA, 90% is crude oil. 90% is crude oil. So it means that there is no deliberate attempt from us to get the chunk of the American market. So, but also, it means that there's more work to be done than before, particularly if AGOA dies. If AGOA dies. If AGOA dies, it is some other African countries that would lose a whole lot. For us, because we are not doing much on it, there may not be too much of a challenge. But I think, and another thing this Trump policy calls for is that we must do everything to ensure that AFTA succeeds.
Good.
That is one thing that must happen, or else we are doomed. Is it working now? Probably with one leg.
Are you sure it's working with one leg?
Well, if it's working with one leg, it means
not
working properly.
You are being hopeful.
But the point is that I have not been very excited from when it started till date, because I know there is a lot of work. If you want to go to some African countries, you have to pass through 2 other countries for you to get in. For example, a woman wanted to send Nigerian food to her granddaughter, whose mother is in Kigali, that the little girl keeps calling her. And then I called a freight forwarder and said, please, they want to send food item, 9,000 naira per kg. 9,000 naira per kg. Is that how you are going to do business in Africa? In fact, the guy later sent to me a list of all what it costs to send things to African countries and what it costs to send to US is 5,500.
Wow. We can't.
So, logistics infrastructure that we need is huge.
I must ask you this question before I let you go. The trade between Nigeria and China has grown exponentially over the years. Now, although Nigeria has suffered a lot of deficit, what does this first direct shipment mean for Nigeria? And how will it impact logistics and supply chain, and in turn, the economy at large?
For us to really gain from this, there has to be a two-way movement. Okay. We are guilty of ships leaving Nigeria empty and going to look for where they can find anything to carry.
To balance it.
The manager of DHL said in a workshop that we're one of the few countries in the world where when they are leaving, their aircraft is leaving, they buy sandbags to balance the aircraft so that it can fly off. And we're partly responsible for this. I've seen in the press several times that for a 100-ton aircraft, it will cost you over $30,000 to load in Nigeria, but it will cost you under $7,000 to load in Ghana. So that gives you an idea. So I'm only using that to emphasize the need for a two-way transaction. That means that Nigeria will have to make conscious effort to negotiate bilateral trade that will improve our position at the moment. The yuan arrangement, the yuan currency arrangement with Nigeria, maybe this is the time that it has to come on stream to help things. Everybody knows that the dollarization of transactions is actually a big problem. AFTA has gotten a way around it, but somebody was asking me that if AFTA makes them, if they send something to somebody in Ghana, the person will pay CDs, and then the bank will convert and give him naira. So what is the point? Is they say, is it dollar you are looking for? Is it profit on your transaction? So that is it. It's that very conversion will need to work. But there will also be a deliberate position for us to make effort from an export point of view. What other things can we supply them more from Nigeria? And then we can drive the bilateral agreement towards that direction. That way, we can start filling ships. So generally, it's about intentionality. We need to be very intentional in these things. But, well,
It's not hopeful.
our name is Hope. So we have to continue to hope. But I think what will help us is that individually, we need to make a difference in whatever it is we are doing. If you appointed an agency head, even if they will kill you, but you have achieved a lot, those who are alive will benefit from it. That's an extreme situation I'm using. But the fact is that I know that if you push some private sector people into certain places in government, there will be a lot of change. It's not going to be easy for them, but they'll be. So that way, maybe we can be moving no matter how small the steps are. Does this country have potentials? Heavily. To the extent that it's a sin to be poor if all the things we have are utilized. So let's keep hoping and let's keep working as individuals.
So it's not about just receiving the first shipment.
No.
There's still a lot of work to be done.
There's a lot of work now. That one that came, only God knows what it is carrying and going back, or whether it is going back empty. That is the question.
And the real deal is for it to go back filled up.
If it goes back empty, our trade position with China will remain the way it is, and it doesn't change anything.
Well, we hope the right heads of agencies does what they need to do. It's not joy or that the first shipment we received, we must export. It's been Dr. Obiora Madu. He is a trade, logistics, and supply chain expert. He's also chairman Multimix Group. Thank you very much for your time and your thoughts on the show. Thank you for the solutions you provide. We hope that these heads of agencies have listened to what you're saying and be able to work with these things and be able to drive our industry. Once again, thank you very much.
Always my pleasure.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode. Join us every week on Maritime Radar to explore factors that will ensure the development of the maritime sector in Africa. You can also expect the latest in global maritime news and industry insights right here. I am Norm Obiaswalo. Many thanks for your time and see you again next week.